Agenda loaded. Give me just 1 minute. Sorry.
Sure. All right, good afternoon. This is Wednesday, May 18th. It's just about 4:30, and I'm going to call this special meeting of the City Council to order and San Diego Water District to order, and ask that the clerk do a roll call for us.
Okay. Councilmember Board Member Hinsey,
Here.
Councilmember Board Member Kranz,
Here.
Councilmember Board Member Lyons,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Mosca, President Mosca,
Here?
and then Mayor Blakespear and Vice President Blakespear is absent.
All right, Mayor Blakespear is running late, so I'm going to be in her stead as the chair of this meeting right now. We have one item on our agenda, and that is return to remote telephonic online meetings effective May 18th, 2022 due to COVID-19 outbreak at city facilities. And our city manager, Pam Entel, is going to take this item. We don't generally do that for special meetings, but we can do that. All right.
Thank you so much, Council. It's with regret that I am making this recommendation, but we have had an outbreak, which the Cal OSHA folks consider a outbreak, not a major outbreak. But we are trying very hard to resist causing a major outbreak. And one of the things that we are doing is trying to get ahead of it. You might recall that in January, we had a major outbreak at city facilities. And the difference between them, which is what I really want to hit home for people today, is when we have a major outbreak, which is 20 or more people within a work group, we have to actually halt operations and close facilities. We need to take a look at looking at all of our filtration systems and do further investigation and testing of our employees. I think you will recall that we did that. In fact, I wouldn't let any of you come into City Hall without testing for a period of about a month and a half. And so rather than kind of roll the dice and see if we end up with that same type of major outbreak, what I'd like to do is get ahead of it and ask that we do remote meetings where we don't have a lot of people gathering in council chambers, and try to do just see if we can kind of nip this one in the bud over the course of just a few weeks instead of a few months. And so I ask for your consideration in doing that at this time.
All right, thank you. City Attorney, do you have anything to add to that?
Not at this time.
All right. Any questions for City Manager?
So my question is how this will go on. Is it indefinitely that this the action we're taking today will last, or do we come back every time we have a meeting and need to decide whether it'll be virtual or remote?
So the way the amendments to the Brown Act are written, the City Council would need to, and they can do this via Zoom, they would need to readopt this resolution every 30 days. So at every successive meeting, the City Council would need to readopt the reso.
So the one in front of us today will last will be for the next 30 days.
Correct, and then the successive meetings would be adopted once within 30.
Got it, thank you.
Did city staff want to say anything else about if there's no other infection within 14 days, then that would also be an additional indicator that we can come back?
Correct. What we'll do is we will take a look at a few different things. One will be that the 14 days is a rolling 14 days. So we sadly had cases that were over multiple days, and each one gets measured as a rolling 14 days. By the way, I don't make up these rules. Cal OSHA makes up these rules for us, and so we're just simply following those rules that we have to. The other thing that I want you to know is that when the council adopts this resolution, it also applies to our other city commissions, Planning Commission, Recreation and Parks Commission, et cetera. So right now, we just have the outbreaks in City Hall and our Cali Mag facility. It doesn't mean that the facility is closed to the public. It just means that we have rules for masking, et cetera, and that we won't have gatherings of large groups of people in City Hall. So for example, we had an employee event scheduled for tomorrow, which is our annual providing awards and ceremonies for years of service, and that's been canceled. And so we are trying very, very hard not to have groups of people gather. When we have a city council meeting or a planning commission meeting, we really have no way of knowing how many people are going to show up and whether or not we'll be able to conduct the meeting safely.
Thank you. Councilmember Lyons, you have a question?
Right, yeah, thank you. So this applies to the two facilities because we have met the Cal OSHA standard in two facilities. What about the senior center, the community and senior center? I mean, are we still monitoring there, or how does this translate to other facilities like that?
Well, see, now you just said it, so you kind of put that out there now about our senior center. We're keeping our fingers crossed. Right now, we don't have an outbreak at the senior center.
Mm-hmm.
We did in January, and we did have to close that facility for over 30 days. So we are keeping an eye on it. Our risk management team and our employees have been very, very good. People self-report. They also go for additional testing to make sure if they have symptoms, they stay home, they take a test, we provide those tests, et cetera. So I think our protocols for managing outbreaks and for managing employees' testing is going very well.
That answer your question?
You did?
All right, any other questions? Well, let's move to public comment. Do we have any members of the public that would like to speak?
Yes, we do. We have three. Bruce Ehlers, Susan Turney, and then Cindy Cremona. Oh, you don't want to speak? Okay, so I'll do that next. So we have two speakers.
Oh, sounds like it's live. So, Deputy Mayor and council members, I'm opposed to the proposed action as currently stated. Staff's recommendation to immediately return exclusively to a Zoom meeting is an extreme step where lesser, equally effective approaches are available. What are some of the options you should consider? How about a hybrid meeting? If, as stated in the staff report, the problem is the city employee COVID outbreak, then a hybrid combined in-person and Zoom meeting would safely isolate exposed staff members from the public. This would also enhance, not impede, public participation. If you proceed with this proposal, then I suggest you codify a nominal duration, and I appreciate the question, Kelly, that was right on, where it would automatically end unless the council decides that the conditions have not improved. This would give the public a timeline, a horizon. I think this ought to be included in the resolution tonight. And hopefully in a few weeks, we can be back to in-person meetings. However, if you're unwilling to accommodate the public with either hybrid meetings or a projected timeline, then I also suggest pushing off any upcoming controversial items such that the public may be fully engaged in these projects. And then finally, if the council goes through with this, will the 3 council members that are actively engaged in campaigning apply the same restraint to their campaigns? How does mixing with the public for a campaign event differ from the city's public meetings? For example, Joy Lyons and Tony Kranz just attended a chamber mixer. Catherine Blakespeare had numerous in-person meetings and rallies in the past week. In your social media posts, no one was wearing a mask. Will these meetings with the public stop and move exclusively to Zoom? I ask that the council be consistent and not apply a different standard to their campaign meetings than they do to public meetings. The public has a right to fully participate in these meetings. I oppose returning exclusively to Zoom meetings for City Hall. I am Bruce Ehlers, candidate for Encinitas City Council, District 4, in New Encinitas and Liebenhain. Thank you.
Cindy Cremona, Leucadia, candidate for mayor of Encinitas. I'm sorry that some city employees have fallen ill, and I wish them a speedy recovery. The recommendation before the city council doesn't do much for them. If you're shutting down the town hall, where residents engage with their elected officials, why does the bureaucracy remain open for business? With a well-fitting mask, we can continue to enter city offices to pay a bill or apply for a permit or ask questions of our hardworking staff. So why are we being denied in-person access to you, our policymakers? That's easy. You don't want to hear from us. The recommendation tonight isn't about keeping people safe, it's about muzzling public participation. When you fired Bruce from the Planning Commission last month, what if that was a remote meeting? People would have objected, as they should, but you wouldn't have felt nearly the same kind of heat. Sunlight illuminates the dark corners of council chambers much better than it does a computer screen. Today, you are closing your doors on the night you're scheduled to replace Bruce. Next week, the controversial homeless parking lot is on your agenda, and in less than a month, you are scheduled to act on the Goodson project. How convenient and how hypocritical. 3 of you are in the midst of election campaigns. Just last night, I saw 2 of you hobnobbing at a mixer, unmasked. Here at the council chambers, your case for closing your doors is poorly supported. Public participation should be your #1 goal, not something to give or take when politically expedient. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then
Any other
Deputy-
public comment?
We do have 3 that registered opposition to the recommended action but did not wish to speak. Susan Turney, Dean Turney, and Gerald Sodomka.
All right, thank you. The hybrid, a member of the public, Bruce, had mentioned hybrid, and I think the last time we had gone from virtual to in person, I had mentioned hybrid as something that was, I thought, having gone through the virtual and it being such a success, and so many people being able to really kind of engage in city council meetings that had not engaged before. I was hopeful that we would be able to do that. But there were a lot of IT issues and constraints and stumbling blocks along the way. Is there any other, could you kind of talk to that? Are there any, have we made any progress with being able to kind of have a hybrid type of meeting where you could have a virtual component and in person at the same time?
So I think there's 2 different issues, and I just want to clarify. The restrictions by Cal OSHA are not on you as the individual. If there are council members that wish to go to a restaurant and not wear a mask or what have you, you're allowed to do that. If you want to go and campaign, you're allowed to do that. The restrictions are on the building and what we're able to do in this building. So we don't have people that campaign in this building. So, I'll just use it as a hypothetical. If you were doing something here, you wouldn't be able to do it under the circumstances that we have with the outbreak. So that's not the piece that's preventing people. It's not, if you want to go to Target and not wear a mask, you're allowed to do that because Target doesn't have an outbreak. We have an outbreak. We're following the protocol that is what's required under state guidelines and regulations because of that outbreak. It doesn't mean you have to behave, if you take off your mask the minute you walk out the door here, that's it. So a hybrid meeting, without getting into too much detail, doesn't solve our problem with a gathering of people here in City Hall. So that is something that's completely separate in terms of what it is that we want to do, and that is something that we've tried to take a look at. Essentially, it takes two different staffs. I need one staff that's covering the people here and one staff that's covering the IT piece on the other end. But that wouldn't assist you even if we had a hybrid meeting right now, other than the people would be telephonic, like
Right.
we're recommending.
And the way that we have these virtual meetings is that we have to basically have this resolution on our agenda that basically has findings for going virtual because of the inability to have it in person. And so, City Attorney, you had mentioned that every month or every meeting, we actually have to have this resolution on our docket and discuss it. And so is that essentially the date certain? Bruce had also mentioned that, a date certain as to when it would expire. And so when that item comes up, that is the moment in time where this city council can discuss, okay, do we want to put this in place for the next 30 days?
Yeah, certainly. So the item would have to be on the agenda at least once within 30 days. Typically, it's done at every meeting as a consent item, but that certainly gives the city council the opportunity to pull that item and discuss whether or not they want to continue going forward or not.
All right, perfect. I see several people in the queue. Councilmember Kranz?
Yes, thank you. And that was the point I was going to make. If we don't have this on an agenda in 30 days, it automatically expires. So I think that's an important part. We don't need to have that language in there, because if we don't take action and make more findings, then it's going to end. And, you know, I mean, this is really unfortunate and disappointing that we're in this situation, but infection rates are currently on a pretty exponential path to crisis again. And, you know, as much as I enjoy the in-person meetings more than I do being on Zoom, this is an old strip mall. Air circulation isn't great. A room full of people breathing in here is leaving, you know, this is a virus that is airborne, and it's what contributes to infection. I will take a meeting with anybody, and I will make sure that the location is outdoors, which is what the event last night was. It was on the Coast News building, beautiful view of the ocean, on the roof patio, roof deck. It was great. I did not hobnob because I didn't really care to hang out with strangers. I hung out with people that I know them. So I will continue to meet with anybody outdoors. It's too bad we can't have our meetings outdoors. That would work for me. But I do agree that these controversial issues are not good for Zoom. So my hope is that we can see this issue once again subside and have the opportunity to have controversial hearings in public, so without being virtual. But as it stands now, it seems to me that the right thing to do is to go back to the virtual. So I'll be supporting the staff's recommendations.
All right, and it sounds like if the infection rates stay down, and if we don't have any more infections, then actually within the 14 days that staff would actually be recommending going back. Councilmember Lyons?
That was actually going to be one of my first questions. So would you shed some light on that?
Absolutely. We track everyone's illness and have people check in when they are not feeling well. And so there's a certain protocol with also after you test positive and you have symptoms or you don't have symptoms, and then you test again 3 or 5 days later, and then you test again before you come in. So we're tracking all of that, and we certainly will be making a recommendation. Our employees want to get back to normal. Again, we enjoyed the short period of time that we were maskless, so we would like to do that, and we will definitely be keeping the council informed and the public informed of what it is that we're looking at. So keep your fingers crossed. We get to a certain date and then somebody else tests positive, and that's where we were at in January and February, and it wasn't any fun.
I find this to be really unfortunate information, and the last thing I want to do is not be in person. I don't want to go virtual, and I know the community doesn't either. It's not ideal, but I have run a business where I would not. I take it very seriously to intentionally make a decision to go against OSHA. I think that's not a responsible way forward. I think that creates risk that we as a city should not put ourselves in that position. So I do take that very seriously. And thank you for clarifying that this is the OSHA's requirement that once we hit this metric, we need to abide by. So thanks for that.
Yeah, I share those thoughts, that sentiment that certainly it's no fun kind of going back to some of the COVID protocols, and I wish we were kind of moving forward, and I think we know with a virus, a virus such as this, that it's not a linear path forward. There's steps back, and unfortunately, it's necessary to kind of take a step back as we have a outbreak and make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure it doesn't become a major outbreak. And since we have 2 of our facilities that now have an outbreak, I think it's a prudent move to go back to virtual and to kind of give rise to some of our COVID protocols as we are now. And so if there are no more questions, I'll entertain a motion on this item.
I would move approval.
I'll second that. And I just have a few more comments to add. I also prefer to be in person rather than virtual, even for those really controversial meetings. Being virtual at my house means that the whole family activity has to stop until the meeting is done. And people can't cook dinner because that creates a lot of background noise. So it is preferable to me to be in person here. Even with those really controversial meetings, there's something important that happens in that exchange. And otherwise, at the end of a controversial meeting, you just turn off your screen and you go to your sad bed where your partner's already asleep and the house is dark and quiet. And so this is definitely not my preference, but being over 7 months pregnant and still not eligible for my next booster, I am really grateful that our city manager is following the protocols and making it safe for people of all ages and different risk profiles to be able to participate in the meeting. And I know that last week especially was a little bit scary looking around, seeing some people masked and some people not masked. And now to have that predictability and know that somebody who might be more vulnerable than somebody else can still participate in our meetings without that fear, I think that's something important that we can offer to our community members. So I'm happy to second this motion, and I hope that we'll be able to return safely back in person as soon as we can.
Great. All right, so we have, unless there are any other questions or comments?
I do have one request, and that would be that we endeavor to allow public commenters to also use video as well as audio, so that we give them that option to turn their camera on. I know that it's my understanding that we had limited it to audio only because of the potential for inappropriate video coming through, but I think that's a risk that I'd rather take to allow people to feel like they're participating a little bit more actively in our virtual meetings. So if the city manager could check with IT about how to make that happen, I would appreciate it. I don't know how my colleagues feel about that, but I think that's an extra step that is worth taking.
I think that's a good suggestion. We'll take that as direction and not an amendment to the motion. So if that's good, we have a motion on the table. Let's vote.
Councilmember Hensy? And Councilmember Kranz? Is it? Oh, okay. Councilmember Hensy, you voting
Yes.
yes? And Councilmember Kranz? Yes. Motion carries unanimously with Mayor Blakespear absent.
So just to clarify with our city attorney, so I believe that motion was for the recommendation under agenda item 1. Do you need a second motion with regard to San Diego Water District?
I would do a second motion.
All right, so we'll treat that first motion for the city council to be virtual as opposed to in person, and then I'll entertain a motion for the second one, which is regarding San Diego Water District board meetings.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Councilmember Lyons.
And then Councilmember Hensy, if you let me know.
My vote is yes.
Councilmember Kranz? Or Board Member Kranz?
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously with Vice President Blakespear absent.
All right, so we're going to adjourn this meeting. This meeting is adjourned, and we will take a 2-minute break and then come back at 5 p.m. for the San Diego Water District Board meeting.